to the heart of America. I'm Steve Gruber, ready to deliver an inclusive and diverse discussion on the most important topics of the day, giving you better analysis and insight than anyone else, shining a spotlight on the cockroaches inside the swamp and delivering truth and justice in the American way just when hope was starting to fade. Here are three big things you need to know to start the day. Number one, retirees lost about a quarter of their 401ks in 2022, but Joe Biden keeps bragging about the great economy. Seems new polling doesn't find Americans very happy. Go figure. Number two, it seems the Green New Deal warrior, Sweet Pete, Little Mayor Pete, really prefers to spend a lot of time and your money flying private jets. We'll tell you about that. And number three, the Department of Energy has sparked quite a storm by concluding the entire global COVID-19 pandemic came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Of course it did. We told you that a long time ago. I've been telling you that since February and March of 2020. I played you some of those clips yesterday to show you what I was saying. But while I was among the small minority that was quite clear on the obvious, those on the left really don't think the lab leak was much of an idea at all. And in fact, they went to work smearing, insulting, tearing down anyone who suggested that the Wuhan virus came from Wuhan. If you've forgotten, I found a whole reel of reminders for you. Listen to this.
Just weeks ago, Dr. Anthony Fauci rejected the conspiracy that coronavirus was man-made in a lab in Wuhan, China.
Both scientists and the U.S. intelligence community agree that this coronavirus was not man-made. That is not a possibility.
Really just take a critical scientific look at the evidence that's available. Our belief is that it's much more likely this came from an animal.
You said the overwhelming amount of evidence indicates that's a lab leak. I believe most card-carrying viral phylogenists and molecular virologists would disagree with you.
I'm really sorry that the lab leak has become such a distraction for so many people, because frankly, we still don't know. There is no evidence really to say.
Of course there was evidence. There was plenty of evidence. Enough that a humble commentator was able to figure it out in February and March of 2020. If I could figure it out using logic, hey, look, here are bats that are 900 miles away. Here's a lab where they do studies of viruses and gain-of-function research. Here's the city where the leak occurred. If I can figure it out. And while we're remembering how it was, it's also a good time to remind you that Joe Biden said he would get to the bottom of it. He would take care of any guilty party, no matter who it turned out to be. Listen to this.
What I would do were I president now, I would not be taking China's word for it. I'd insist that China allow our scientists in to make a hard determination of how it started, where it's from, how far along it is, because that is not happening now.
You mentioned 554,064 American dead from COVID-19. A lot of families want to know how this happened, how it got here. Have you had a chance to speak to any of your international partners, any of President Xi, who I know you go way back with? Have you had a chance to ask him if these reports are true that China maybe misled the world at the beginning?
No, I have not had that conversation with President Xi. Thank you.
No, I haven't held President Xi accountable at all. I promised I'd be tough. I'd be tough on China. No, President who? No, President Xi. Who? Xi. Never mind. As it turns out, old Joe didn't do much of anything and still has not demanded answers from President Xi in China. He's not demanded that U.S. scientists have access to the information we need to finally put this whole origin question to rest. Although we already did, of course. Make no mistake, I put this to rest 3 years ago. I told you the COVID-19 virus was in America sometime prior to Thanksgiving 2019. I still believe that's exactly accurate. Prior to Thanksgiving in 2019, that virus was on the ground and spreading in America. It's just a matter of time before that's confirmed as well. And remember, I told you that here first. Now, I cannot say that the leak from the Wuhan Institute of Virology was intentional. It would seem to me that it was more powerful if it was intentional, but then again, maybe triggering panic. And when I say more powerful, the virus would have been more powerful. If it had been an intentional contamination, you'd think, well, they'd make it more deadly. But then again, maybe triggering fear and panic, lockdowns and the destruction of the economies of several countries would have been the goal. Maybe it was. and the goal that in large part has been achieved, and that America and the rest of the world are still dealing with it. So again, I will let that one sit until I have some definitive proof that it was or was not intentional. We simply don't know. I'll repeat what I think is the most likely scenario, and this is something I've been saying for 3 years as well. In my mind, it's most likely that someone was contaminated when they left the lab where they were working on gain of function there, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and headed across town, maybe to that infamous Wuhan wet market to eat live toads and barbecue pangolin, which is an endangered anteater that should be left alone in the first place. But hey, maybe it's good on the Barbie. I don't know. Anyway, if a contaminated person mingled at the wet market, that could easily have been Ground Zero, or any of 100 more locations for food and drink on the streets of Wuhan, having left the lab contaminated. But despite the FBI concluding in 2021 that the pandemic came from a lab leak in Wuhan, and now the Department of Energy arriving at the same conclusion, those inside the swamp, they just won't give up. They simply will not admit that we've had this nailed for 3 years and they've been lying, protecting the Chinese Communist Party and cashing in on billions of dollars for the now admittedly failed mRNA injections. And like I reported yesterday, in the UK, by the way, if you missed this, in the UK, in England in 2022, 92% of the COVID fatalities had 2 jabs or more of the so-called vaccine. I would call that a failed effort and a failed drug. 92% of the COVID fatalities in the UK, according to the Office of, Statistics or whatever it was called, said that 92% of the fatalities fully vaxxed or more, fully vaxxed and boosted. But I digress. Let's get back to some major league gaslighting coming out of the swamp. Shall we? The White House began running interference immediately after the Department of Energy's report saying that the virus came from Wuhan and a lab leak, and they began circling the wagons to protect who? Anthony Fauci, of course. Listen.
So I do want to speak to Dr. Fauci because the political attacks on someone like Dr. Fauci, who and public officials more broadly, but Dr. Fauci, who has spent his career saving lives, and whether it was the AIDS epidemic or as we are just coming out of this COVID, this once-in-a-generation pandemic, these attacks have been counterproductive. They have not been helpful. This is someone, again, who has spent his almost entire career fighting for the well-being, the health of the American people. And so,
yeah, fighting for the health of the American people. And waffling and lying and doing backdoor deals all the way. Anthony Fauci's the guy that sent out emails telling people to stop talking about the lab leak. He changed the entire narrative of the professionals behind the scenes. This is a guy that has lied in front of Congress, lied to you and I, and is possibly the biggest media whore of my lifetime. That's who he is. Let's just admit, no matter what you think about Anthony Fauci, he was wrong, or he lied, or both. We'll take a break. It's the Steve Gruber Show. Good to have you here. I'll be right back.